Bitcoin on Wednesday hit a new all-time high of more than 66,000
Now
US
it's starting
dollars.
to actually gain some
If
traction.
you're stupid enough to buy it, you'll pay the price for it one day.
It has quintupled in value over the last year.
Elon Musk makes one of his riskiest bets ever.
Money is just a number in a database.
We're talking about a decentralized
world. The supply of dollars can never be sufficient to satisfy the debts that it creates.
Hey guys, welcome to All Time High, a crypto podcast. This is a show where we're going to go through the crypto-related news, economic-related news every week, and perhaps you'll benefit from our commentary. My name is David Vader, and this is Swirty, my co-host.
G'day guys, how you going?
So I guess maybe we can first introduce ourselves and talk about why we're doing this podcast.
I'm happy with an introduction. I think all-time high comes from, I guess it's aptly named because of the timing right now. We're approaching a new all-time high. It's exciting times for Bitcoin. And I think a lot of my friends, family, they sort of chat about it and they want to know, what is Bitcoin? What is crypto? And they talk about this sort of stuff because I guess I talk about it a fair bit. And you and I have discussed this for a couple of years now. We've been in the space.
Yeah.
And I think it's a good opportunity for us to sort of sit down and chat about this space and this industry and what's actually happening, current news and what excites us.
Yeah. Awesome, man. Well put. I think it's kind of a good, the motivating factor for us really doing this is to speak to our audience of friends and show them, hey, this is something we're checking out now, or this is the way that we're interpreting this news. Maybe you can look at it that way too. And
exactly.
Hopefully you'll get rich with us.
So how about we kick off? We got some news articles we were sharing today. So how about you kick the first one off?
Yeah. So this one's a little bit of an oldie, but it kind of has been rearing its head again in a couple of the crypto chats that I'm involved in. This is the headline: 40% of US dollars in existence were printed in the last 12 months. Now this article's dated back in May. So it's probably even worse now, but I think it's really
a lot of money.
It's a lot of money, and it's really apt with the recent rise of Bitcoin, and of course the all-time highs that are happening across all sorts of economic vehicles, including the Dow and stock markets and things. What happens when you print a lot of money?
Yeah, so basically the Feds come out and they want to stimulate the economy essentially by just pumping more money into it. And that is designed to give people buying power. It puts money back into the economy. It helps take a bit of the pressure off of people who are struggling because of this pandemic in the hopes that it will revitalize businesses and essentially revitalize the nation.
That's right.
I think you and I both read the Bitcoin Standard. We know a bit about the history of economics. I think traditionally that has been shown to be a poor choice.
Yeah.
Especially when you've got this kind of things like inflation start rearing up.
That's right.
And you get runaway inflation mixed with a stock market, which doesn't actually reflect what's happening with the economy. A lot of people get that a little bit. It's a bit of a misdemeanor thinking, well, if the stock market's doing well, shouldn't the economy be also doing well? But that isn't always the case.
No,
especially with the US stocks.
Especially in a time where there is so much money printing. We have incredible amounts of money being printed, 40% of all US dollars in existence. That's just mind-blowing when you think about it. And instead of spending that money on, mom and pop stores down the road or, opening a new dry cleaning business, people are taking that money and putting it into the stock market or into assets that are more like safe haven assets like Bitcoin and gold. So that's why these markets are pumping up so much. And of course, crypto seems much more justified given its haven.
Its current status as a safe haven.
Yeah, that's right. But, things like stock market, of course, gets pumped up as well because people are looking for returns on their money. And they're not going to get it holding it. They're going to get 3 to 5% loss every year holding it. And of course, that's the official inflation numbers. Really unofficial ones are probably a lot higher.
Yeah, I think it'll take a bit of time to actually review and look back on that to see the truth of what actually happened. And I think people would do well to research a bit about what happens when governments print a lot of money. What are terms like inflation, or even worse, stagflation? What fundamentally happens post that? How do you revitalize economy through efforts such as printing money or taxation or different devices that the Fed or whomever can use to either cool or to heat up an economy? Those are kind of like obviously like buzz terms, but essentially, yeah, we're looking at this very interesting situation where Bitcoin is doing really well. And I think a lot of people have seen that. We also did have, I was reading about there was a 10,000 or 15, 14,000 Bitcoins were sold back onto exchanges. I'm not sure if it was one sale or a series of, but they were basically swallowed by the market, or everyone just bought them straight away.
Yeah.
So demand is high. And that means that the amount of Bitcoin supply is low. So people aren't selling a lot of Bitcoin, but people are very keen to buy Bitcoin. And of course, when that happens, price tends to go up. So those, I guess, they're the mechanics we're kind of looking at. You shared Tom Lee was saying that the price is going to hit 100,000. Was it 100,000 a Bitcoin?
Yeah, that and he kind of mentioned that the futures ETF, which has now been approved by, I want to look it up here, the ProShares Bitcoin futures.
Yeah, ProShares.
ETF. Yeah, so he's of the mind. He's been an advocate for Bitcoin for a long time, but he's kind of on the mainstream media, so he spends a lot of time on this. So he's really bringing this to the masses, this news. And I mean, as well as I do, that this is it's pretty likely, it's an inevitability. It's just a matter of timing and when it's going to hit that 100K.
Yeah, and it's been looking so strong the last couple of days. I imagine we'll see some pullbacks, some retracements, but
the culture is shifting. There's a cultural shift towards Bitcoin, and the people are wisening up in a lot of ways. We'll get to a couple of articles later where things in the media and things that are getting pushed to us are very safe and plastic and popcorn-esque, but people are wisening up. And I remember one article you sent me this week about this 7-foot Harambe statue.
The Harambe statue?
That's right. That's staring down Wall Street's charging bull. Now, like the people, it's a meme economy now, right? And Bitcoin is the epicenter of that.
Well, we were bred on the internet, our generation, and the generation that's sort of obviously come after us. We're talking pretty much anyone from about the age of, I'd even say 8-year-olds and 10-year-olds are hearing about it now. It's on our local media channels. Channel 7 is showing the price of Bitcoin. People are talking about it in the media. People are talking about it at family barbecues. It's a well-known asset now. People are still unsure about what it is, as far as, is it a store of value? Is it a currency? What's the purpose of it? How can I use it? And I think obviously people still want to just make money from it. They're like, well, can I make money from it? Can I get, can I sell it to make money? It's kind of like the Morpheus quote. What is it? When you don't need to, I can't remember the phrasing of it, but it's like when Bitcoin's finally ready, we won't need to sell it. Essentially.
That's right. Yeah. So you're telling me I can one day I can sell my Bitcoins for millions? No.
Yeah, this is the one.
You that when we're ready, you won't need to.
You won't have to. Yeah. And that's essentially what we're looking at is people are starting to understand this more than just some internet backwater dark web thing. The Harambe statue is it's funny. It is pretty funny. But the first ever Bitcoin ETF is what kind of really excited me this week. I think seeing that they've locked in the launch date, everything's been confirmed, and the New York Stock Exchange will have its first ever ETF, and that's really exciting. ETFs are fairly new. If you don't know what an ETF is, look it up. It's basically it's like a ledger which mirrors asset classes or a single asset or multiple mixed assets, depending on how it's actually defined. So this is one that's on Bitcoin. You don't actually own any of the Bitcoin, but you do own the amount of money of which Bitcoin is valued at. So from a pool of money, your amount can go up or down with Bitcoin. That's exciting. That gives mum and dad investors, people who want to sort of dip their toe in, but didn't want to actually buy Bitcoin. And on that, actually, one of the main issues I'm seeing is Bitcoin is confusing. A lot of my friends are like, well, how do I buy it? How do I get Bitcoin? Or how do I get a wallet? Or what are wallets? And these steps are a little bit confusing. I think it needs to be simplified and streamlined. There's still a lot of room for growth in the way that people can access, spend, trade, invest in Bitcoin. And this is a really good step in that direction.
That's right. And what an ETF essentially does, I mean, it's a futures ETF, so you're not holding the actual Bitcoins, but you are able to now make a bet using an institution, a fund that is holding the futures for it. And you're able to make a bet. Now, what this opens up in my excited mind in Australia is, of course, the opportunity to invest your superannuation into crypto, which would open up a huge bull run, no doubt, particularly localized.
Yeah, big time.
But of course, this is a US ETF, and I think it's the start of many to come. There's already talk of Ethereum ETFs as well, and it's all looking up. I mean, another article here talking about the on-chain metrics of Bitcoin. And how it's kind of pointing to this huge bull run. There's so many interesting things when you're looking at on-chain metrics and that point to these incredible bullish indicators. The first one that stood out to me is the MVRV Z score, which I saw trending on Twitter.
But this is one of the things where I guess people are starting to look at the way that we can use indicators to predict future price movements depending on essentially volume and price action, how many people are buying, trading, holding, all that sort of stuff.
That's right. And another big on-chain metric is the visibility around who is sending their Bitcoins to an exchange or keeping it on exchange versus people that are pulling it off an exchange. And of course, the idea is that if you're buying Bitcoin on an exchange and then you're pulling it straight off, you're a long-term hodler. Whereas if you're keeping it on the exchange, or maybe you've got a cold wallet and you're sending it to an exchange, maybe that indicates that you're ready to sell it, or you're possibly going to sell it, or maybe trading it for something else. But that's really a bearish indicator of funds going to exchanges. And the on-chain metrics unequivocally show that Bitcoin is getting bought and pulled off the exchange, which means people are looking at this as a long-term prospect, a long-term investment vehicle. And that's exactly what
it does. It does convincingly look like it is heading towards 100K US, mind you. So that's pretty exciting news. And I think, was it about 18 months ago? I think it was 18 months ago, I was sharing articles with you where some experts were saying by the end of 2021, going into 2022, they were expecting prices in excess of $100,000, $150,000. Some people are saying $300,000, $350,000. Of course, this is speculative. It still is an unknown asset. It's speculative. The price can move a lot, but if this MVRV indicator is to go by, then we could be looking at 100K quite soon. Which is really exciting news, especially with a lot of good news. And I saw that one the other day, a little infographic which shows every time China bans Bitcoin, the price jumps. And of course, they banned it recently.
Yes, yeah, the FUD will never stop.
It won't. No.
Yeah, the fear, uncertainty, and doubt. That's what FUD stands for. It'll never stop. It'll always be there, and governments will, institutions and Jamie Dimon, of course, is famous for this, spreading lots of FUD. Jamie Dimon is the head of what is it, JP Morgan Bank in the States, and he's always publicly said that he's anti-Bitcoin, and yet on the back end, his traders are buying it up and making a hell of a lot of money on it.
I'd like to know if people like Jamie are actually anti-Bitcoin, or people involved in, whatever banking industry, when they say, Bitcoin is a bad thing. It's a speculative asset, or it's a scam, or whatever they might have to say, pyramid scheme.
Yeah.
What do they really think though? Because there's so many underlying reasons why people might say that. But if you look at what Bitcoin offers and what it does, any smart person who can look at logic and say, yeah, that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
It's hard to deny the power of what Bitcoin offers.
That's right. I mean, these people are essentially puppets. They're not incentivized to tell you the truth, and they're not incentivized to share their opinion honestly. They're incentivized to help manipulate the masses through talking points, whether that is Bitcoin bad or Bitcoin scary. That's all they're pushing. Behind the scenes, they're buying the same stuff up as quickly as possible, just like you and I are.
It's interesting when friends or family send me an article. Usually it's something like the China banning Bitcoin, or someone from the Federal Reserve or whoever American politician says that Bitcoin is a bad thing and it's used to buy drugs. And depending on where you get your information from, a lot of that stuff is pretty easily and quickly shown to be either false or basically just an opinion from this person who doesn't really know a lot about Bitcoin. But the interesting thing is, it is continually getting buzz headlines in the news, and more as we see them. That ETF really brought a lot of new investors in. I think that's going to be pretty strong selling point. I'd like to see other variants on it, perhaps Australian, perhaps we could have index funds for Bitcoin soon. People have been talking about this for years.
Baskets kind of thing.
Yeah. And I mean, individual ones would be lovely for Ethereum, but essentially, once we start opening up the larger market and giving access to just mum and dad investors, we're going to see that really change. I think at least for the mainstream, because NFTs brought in a lot of interest to crypto. They've been around for a few years now. With essentially Ethereum is what these things are, the platforms use to create these NFTs. They're just encrypted. Essentially, they're just documents, which it's a contractual agreement between two people with mechanics attached to it. And a lot of people use that for art or whatever. But that's been a really interesting mechanic of crypto that's come out of the woodwork. And for a few years, that was seen as a very meme. Oh, I don't know what this is. Kind of, it's just monkeys and weird photos. But now people are starting to realize that that's actually going to extend to every single business on the planet.
Yeah, that's right.
Raoul Pal, I was sharing that stuff from Real Vision. Raoul Pal talking about what the future actually holds for crypto and NFTs and all this area, all of these new internet things. And when you've got billionaires, economists, experts in these fields who are very excited about this, and you've got a lot of early adopters and a lot of money pouring in, I think all of those are signs for people like you and I, and just any general person who's kind of half cluey about investing and wondering what this new stuff is. They're really positive signs to jump in and go, you know what, I'm going to dip my toes in and look at either getting myself some Bitcoin or other altcoins.
Yeah, at the very least, I should learn what this thing is.
And people keep asking me that.
Yeah. One thing you touched on as well was the mum and pop investors. And I think that's one benefit of these EFTs. But the other, and I would argue even the bulbous portion of the iceberg, is the institutional money that now is able to access it. Pension funds. We're talking about superannuation in Australia, and of course in the US, pension funds, managed funds. They're now able to buy this futures ETF and have exposure to Bitcoin. And what that does is it doesn't flood money in immediately, but what happens is one or two funds start to buy it, and they have much greater returns than any other funds, and the other funds have to buy it just to keep up.
Yeah, you get the competitive nature of it. Yeah,
that's right.
And people will see it. They're going to see it's once people are reactionary, we don't tend to really plan and look long-term stuff, because I guess it's abstract thinking, going, okay, understanding the economics of inflation, understand the economics of printing too much money, understand the economics of how a pandemic may work. These are really complicated topics that I don't, I'm just parroting basically what the experts are saying and what books I've read, but it makes sense. And if the experts are saying it, then I'm going to tend to side with them.
Yes.
And when something comes along like this and people have, essentially banks and large institutions are going to be forced to have to consider taking on a percentage of Bitcoin as their asset class.
That's right.
And yeah, that's going to really start forcing people to then decide, well, do I compete with that and copy with them? Do I miss out? You're going to get that FOMO. And I think we're going to see a bit of essentially people want to see the price of Bitcoin go up. They want to see it hit. Once it hits 100K, people are going to start noticing. They're going to really start noticing. Just as each milestone goes above that to 150, 200, 250. Once we start getting to $250,000 of Bitcoin and above, sky's the limit to essentially what is going to happen with that, everyone jumping on board and wanting a part of this.
The mainstream media, though, is giving us articles like Mariah Carey buys Bitcoin. And, you know, there's not a huge
Elon Musk says Bitcoin is bad. Elon Musk says the Dogecoin is good.
Yeah, yeah. So I guess the point I'm trying to make is that it's important to educate yourself, whether it's NFTs now, because it's something new and interesting. And, you know, a lot of my friends who I told about Bitcoin in 2013 and they ignored it or they didn't do their research. But then, you know, 3 or 4 years later, saw some article on news.com. They, you know, came back and said, hey, what's this thing you told me about ages ago? The mainstream media are always going to feed the popcorn style articles to people. They're going to make it soft, make it palatable, make it easy. And, you know, with something like Bitcoin or NFTs, it's not always super easy to understand, but that's exactly why it's important, because the barrier to entry is a little higher. It's important to educate yourself on that. And to that point, I saw 2 articles this week which really highlight the popcorn nature of the media and how it dresses up these systemic issues that we're now facing as a result of the C word, which we can't say.
Is this the invasive bug article?
In Australia,
tell me about this.
In Australia, there's a lot of delays with new cars coming in from overseas, and of course,
interestingly, that's pushing up demand for used cars and particularly four-wheel drives. And the price is skyrocketed on secondhand Australian four-wheel drives.
Interesting stuff. The point, though, is we're having these delays as a result of supply chain issues, all global supply chain issues. There's issues with lumber, there's issues with metal supplies, there's all sorts of issues. And of course, liquidity in the market is pushing, you know, these prices of lumber skyrocketing as well. People are taking advantage of this stuff. But of course, the media says here in this headline, the invasive stink bug is what's causing delays with Australia's new car imports.
It's the first I've heard about it.
Yeah, they're claiming that the reason that a lot of Australians are, you know, waiting for months to get their new cars that they've purchased is because there's long fumigation delays, so they can make sure there's not this invasive bug. And of course, that is really the epitome of the media dressing up, putting lipstick on a pig, so to speak. They're dressing it up, making it look nice, but really, it's not nice. And people don't want the complicated news of there are supply chain issues globally. Another article, the second one that I mentioned, is the global supply snags could mean fewer toys under the Christmas tree. There's issues with wood, right? Which means that there's less pallets being made, which means that those pallets can't be used to ship goods all over the country or internationally. That's going to impact a lot of things. And the next, you know, year or two are going to be very interesting with respect to that. But of course, the media is just like, it's going to affect the toys under the Christmas tree. Your thoughts?
Yeah. See, that's obviously a sensationalized news heading, but there's truth in it. It's the mechanics of what are going on with the economy here with supply chains they're pretty complicated. And with, like, you know, you're looking at large scale issues all over the world, in particular, also including China has stopped buying and importing a lot of Australian steels and metals, and you know, our beef, our wine. There was all those issues with the agreements which China and Australia couldn't get back on board with, and prices have plummeted for steel in Australia. I'm not sure if that's steel or if it's the iron or the metal components, but regardless, they plummeted. So we're having a lot of issues there with who's actually going to buy all of this sort of stuff. And the ore itself, the price of it and mining has become quite an issue. There's been these, we've got the fuel crisis at the moment going around the world, which I think is going to start hitting Australia soon. We're going to see, because when I was out rural recently, the prices were ridiculous for diesel and LPG. So we've been having supply chain issues with petrol and fuel. I think as one of the factors of that, obviously we've got the COVID pandemic has been, if by now you don't think that's affected things, it really has. These are going to be problems for years to come. And it's fundamentally changed the way that people want to work, the way that the world economies are going to work. I sent you the article, The Great Resignation.
Yeah.
People are leaving their jobs. We had a really good chat about why that may be, and we had some interesting theories. I'd love to dig into that more and talk to some economics experts or socioeconomics people who understand human psychology and purchasing and all that sort of stuff, and maybe why these people would be leaving their jobs. I think one of the things that's starting to happen now is people are seeing the benefits of working away from the office, having access to the family, to fewer hours and fewer days at work where you don't actually have to be in the office. One of the issues I'm seeing more and more and hearing about more and more is people are having lots and lots of superfluous meetings online. There's far more emails going back and forth. So this is kind of causing these new issues with communication. But it might be a good trade-off being able to work from home and have a community around you based in your local suburb. And I think, we're going to see a transition from that, because if you don't have to, as a company, if you don't have to pay for a large building, office building or a skyscraper or whatever have you, then you're going to save money on this. If we can get efficiency running better, this is going to make, essentially, it's going to make things just work easier for large corporations to have employees at home.
It's a big change that's happening in the world, and I think that's kind of
it
a good.
Really is, man.
Yeah, it really is. It's what it means for Bitcoin at the end of the day, and what it means for crypto is growth. And you and I are well aware of that. I think that's a good spot to wrap it up, man. Thanks for joining and hosting this first ep in this series with me. I hope we can do this every week and cover off more interesting news. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, that'd be good. Yeah, I'd like to sort of go over this, I guess, in a way that's designed to just sort of help my friends and family who have questions about it, and we chat about it. By no means are we experts in any particular field, but we spend a lot of time reading what the experts have to say. And I get excited about these areas and they fascinate me. And I'd like to explore that more in a public space to help educate people and also just get people involved and excited as well, because we're seeing probably the most important fundamental shift of human behavior in 200 years, if not ever. In fact, it really could be the most important shift in human behavior.
Right on. Okay, fantastic. Signing off. Peace.